Joining me now is Simon Parker from the Telegraph and Argus. Thanks for joining, Simon.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Yes, you too, mate. Long time no see. It's, as ever, with Bradford City, a busy time for you, especially for covering the club. But now it seems also maybe more so than it has been for a little while at least. Obviously, the departure of Mark Hughes, Kevin McDonald coming in as caretaker. I mean, how do you assess to start with, I guess, the season as a whole?
Well, as a whole, not great, but it is the parrot the old thing. It is very early, but I think they needed to make a change. I think everyone looks at that and accepts that now, and it's just where they go from here. It is a little bit of a step into the unknown once again, and we're used to that round here. It happens quite often. I mean, I think Mark Hughes was here 19 months, which by Bradford City standards is almost a gold clock time. So but it is another state of flux. But it needed to happen because it's been a very underwhelming first couple of months of the season. Put it bluntly.
Where did it go wrong? Because you look at last season, and all bar a semi-final in Carlisle, it was a pretty good season compared to those that had been before in the last 5 years or so, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah,
Where's it gone wrong?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned Carlisle. Because I mean, to be honest, if the season as a whole, judged with the previous couple of years, it was a big improvement, wasn't it? I mean, I think they were two bottom half finishes the season two season before that, and to finish in the playoffs, is huge progress from where they've been. We had something to get excited about end of the season. You saw the crowds at the Leyton Orient game, the last league home game. And then obviously for the Carlisle first leg, both bumper crowds, and Valley Parade was buzzing again. And, we shouldn't forget that. But unfortunately, that second leg was awful. And I think that was the start of the demise of everything because, it was just one of those, it was such an insipid performance that day. They seemed to go with the attitude of we mustn't lose this. Let's defend our lead, which was always going to be a big risk at a ground where they've not got a good record and Carlisle were going to come flying at them. And of course, it backfired. And then there was the infamous substitution in the second period of extra time, where you take off your winger for a third centre half and then give them a free header. It was always going to be. So that unfortunately, that sort of changed the outlook on Mark Hughes a little bit with supporters. There was a big hangover after that. And I think from the manager's point of view, I don't think he ever recovered from it. It was such a knockout blow for him. I don't think he saw that coming. And of course, he spent the summer sort of, down in the dumps after that. And there was something about this season; it just didn't quite look I wouldn't say buzzing, but he didn't quite look the same Mark Hughes that he'd been at the end of the previous season. And obviously, then there was the switch to the formation switch, which was a bold move, and he did it from day one. And you thought at the time, right, well, if you're doing it from day one, at least they've got plenty of time to bed it in. But however long they gave it, it never really looked particularly comfortable playing with the three centre halves. And ultimately, he went back to what he knew. And by then, unfortunately, sort of the ship had sailed a little bit, and you could just sense the inevitability of what was going to happen next.
How much of a surprise is it that Mark Hughes kind of, as you say, kind of looked a little bit dejected over the course of the summer and coming into this season? How much of a surprise is it that he kind of, I don't know, almost kind of, had that hangover effect almost. And with a manager of his experience that's kind of been there, done it at the top level, wasn't able to almost dust himself down and come at it, full of vigor and full of enthusiasm to go again, sort of thing. Why do we think there was that effect on him, given that he's had such a career in the game?
Yeah, well, obviously I can't talk for him, but I wonder deep down whether he thought he was good. Yeah, as you say, he came from the top level. He's always been at the top level, barring I think 6 months in the Championship, going back up with Blackburn. So, he knew the elite level from day one of his career. And I think, he did take a while to get his teeth, get his head around this level, because obviously it was something so alien to him. But I think deep down he thought, with his knowledge and his background and his experience, he was going to crack it regardless. Playing it the way he wanted, that pass orientated possession style, which is quite unusual at a sort of up and atom division like this one, which is sort of full of energy and power as much as anything. But he was determined to do it his way, and I think he thought he would do it this way. And I think the fact that he didn't was such a sort of slap in the face. I think he sort of came up going, oh, I didn't see that coming, and
Yeah.
I think he just seemed to have really sort of deflate him, and obviously the fact that the way they went down, if they'd gone down fighting and Carlisle had just beaten them on the day, but it'd been a end-to-end cracker, then people would have said, fair enough, you gave it your best shot, let's go again. But it was just the way they just sort of, I wouldn't say accepted it, but it was such a negative outlook about that performance that day and about the setup that day, and it just handed the initiative to Carlisle, and I think that was a lot of supporters saw that for as a pretty weak effort on the biggest stage, and unfortunately, it just didn't recover from that.
In terms of the style of play, obviously, it's one of those we know across the land at all levels that styles of play can be a very divisive thing for supporters.
Mm.
But obviously, that possession-based style in League Two, as you say, it's not as commonly seen. Gradually, perhaps more so, but when it works, it's great, and when it doesn't, it's dull as, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, is that fair to say where City fans saw it? I mean, I remember that night in January when Rochdale came to town and caused an almighty upset. But the frustration in that game in particular was fairly quick with the way it was going.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing. I memean, you're speaking to someone who used to. I used to watch Spain, and they bore the pants off me when everyone was raving about how great they were to watch. I couldn't stand them. But I mean, yeah, we're not talking route one. It's got to be a long ball, angled ball, knockdown, what have you. But it was pass and pass and pass. And he used to say about passing with purpose, but that was where you'd look at it and go, really, because some of it, some of the stats. I mean, there was a couple of glaring ones towards the end of his reign, where the number of passes in the Harrogate and Walsall home games, one of which they scrambled a late equaliser, and the other one when they were soundly beaten by a very average team. And then you compared it to Swindon last week, where there was half the number of passes, but they won, and it was a pulsating game. There were chances at both ends. Yes, they could have conceded, but yes, they could have scored more. Yeah. But everyone went home happy because they'd seen a belting game of football, which is ultimately what you want to see, and they'd seen the win. And then you hold it up against the figures of 600-700 passes or touches in the previous games when they've created so little, 1-2 shots on target. And you think, well, where's the purpose in that passing? And I think, crowds, particularly Valley Parade crowds, like to see their team have a real go. And I mean, why shouldn't you? The biggest crowds in the division, you expect to see your team on the front foot. That's the phrase, on the front foot. And they didn't seem to do that enough because of the way they were playing. I don't think it was the players themselves not doing it, but obviously they were playing to a structure and a system that sort of encouraged them to take their time to build it up, look for the gaps to try and play through. And unfortunately, at this level, it doesn't make for great viewing. And inevitably, you come up against two banks of four, possibly even two banks of five, who just won't let you pass. And, it just becomes a very, very dour watch.
In terms of where City go from here, then, I mean, kind of looking backwards to go forwards, almost like over the last 5-6 years or so, there has been all manner of names that have had the hot seat. Going up Stuart McCall, Grayson, the ill-fated spell with David Hopkins, Gary Bowyer, who was had been there and done it in the lower leagues. Back to McCall, the untested in Sellers and Truman, Derek Adams, who just had a promotion, and obviously that didn't work. To Mark Hughes, the experienced at the top level of the game, but less so League Two, and nothing has worked. It's the elusive mystery of Bradford City of what does it actually take, with the exception of Phil Parkinson going a bit further. What does it take to get Bradford City going and moving up the leagues in the right direction? Where the hell do they go from here? What style of manager do you think, anyway, that Ryan Sparks and the Bradford City board will be looking for?
It's $1 million question. You're probably asking the wrong man. I mean, I've done this job for 23 years. I've seen one promotion, so my track record stinks. But yeah, as you say, Phil Parkinson aside, Stuart McCall obviously got very, very close. Mark Hughes last season got to the playoffs. Other than that, you're sort of scratching around going, yeah, and what about the rest? As you say, I mean, most recently, Derek Adams, who had a sort of reputation for promotions, he's won a couple. One with a very big club in Plymouth, one with a very small club in Morecambe, but he couldn't crack it. It's an odd one, but you've got to look at it. I don't think there's a prototype. I don't think they've sat down and said we want a manager like this. I think they're very open-minded about this one. it's almost a damned if you do, damned if you don't at the moment, isn't it? Because obviously Kevin McDonald was a bit of a left field choice for a caretaker. But, I think most people thought, it'd be Mark Trueman yet again. The fact that it wasn't was quite significant, I think, because it shows they were looking for something a bit different to sort of the safe hands of Mark Trueman. And I think they wanted a voice in the dressing room that the players will instantly respond to. And who better than, a big character there, a big teammate, with huge experience and a current teammate. So, the players have certainly stepped up to the way he's sort of, talking to them. But obviously, whether that's long term, it's very much up in the air. I mean, he keeps making noises. He don't really want it, and he's very much learning on his feet. We were talking last night after the Grimsby game about should they appeal for after Osadabi sending off, and he admitted that he didn't know how the process worked. He said, "I've only been there as a player on the receiving end." So it's things like that. So it is all very very up in the air. But I think what the last week has done is bought them some valuable time to just calm things down. It's because obviously when Mark Hughes went, had the result gone against him against Swindon, then the pressure would have been on to make an appointment pretty quickly. And obviously then you're skirting around who's available. And perhaps there's people in jobs that they might be looking at, but obviously it'll take a bit longer, a bit more negotiation, a lot more awkward to get to the table. But obviously if you're against the clock, that makes it very difficult. Whereas now the scenario, it's obviously settling down. Kevin McDonald's going to be in charge again against Wimbledon on Saturday, quite rightly, because he's not done anything wrong so far, and more importantly, the players are responding to it. It might be a honeymoon period, but it's what they needed, and it's just sort of taking the heat off the situation. It's early enough in the season. There's plenty of time to rebuild. It's not a case of you're chasing your tails, mid-March or anything. So I think it's a bit of a suck it and see. They're talking to a few people. They've identified a few people. I think there might be a bit of an interview process next week. But again, I'm not sure if that's going to be as in, we can offer you this job. It's more of a case of, we sort of see potential in you. Let's talk about it. Let's see if you fit what we're looking at, and then sort of play it by ear a little bit. I don't think it's a case of there's going to be a decision Monday morning and an appointment Tuesday. But, unless, of course, if things went horribly wrong at the weekend, they might, again, move the goalpost. But the way it stands at the moment, I think they're just a case of, they've got the time to look at things properly and just consider, because I don't think there's an actual ideal, A1 candidate that they've nailed their colours to the mast with.
Do you think there's, and again, this is a very simple way of wording this question, do you think there's a plan in terms of, because it's like you say, because there's perhaps no set style they want to go down, no, designated way of wanting to play and that sort of thing.
Well, I think
could this take a while in the sense that they might end up with casting the net perhaps too far and considering too many options? We might be sat here in a fortnight's time thinking, well, there's still no close to knowing who's going to get the job.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I suppose you can look at it. Football is not an exact science, is it? I mean, you look at Huddersfield, obviously. Huddersfield hurrying Neil Warnock away, bringing in Darren Moore, and it's not exactly started with a bang, has it? Compared to what they were doing under Neil Warnock before he went. So it's one of those. I think the way they're looking at it, they're quite sort of comfortable. The club, comfortable in the situation as it stands. I mean, there are people who are interested. There's names being put forward. A lot of them being basically just agents floating them. I mean. Every story that pops up, you think it ticks the betting markets, doesn't it? But there's very little reality in most of it.
I was going to touch on Lee Bell, for example, obviously the one that you've written out today, but the sources are coming from far and wide places, and some of the sports stuff that your Sportland and all that sort of thing that's on Facebook and that sort of thing. There's other names that are being thrown into the ring are seemingly far-fetched, put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the list, and I could probably say that perhaps 3 or 4 of them look like they might be potential candidates, but the rest are just fillers. It made me laugh. You see, Gary Bowyer was up there in the betting the other day, which probably tells you all you need to know about the credibility of some of these lists. It's very much a bit of guesswork and a bit of mischief, and and a few people doing other people favors by getting their names out there. I think that story last week, linking Neil Redfern and Steve Thompson was very much a favour for an old mate. And the Lee Bell story smacks of an agent getting his name out there, either for a better contract or for a bit of interest somewhere else. that happens, and I think people need to see through some of the nonsense that goes on, and I think they do. But it's a bit of fun at times, but don't be fooled by very short odds, because it doesn't take much for someone to put a fiver on somebody, and then they'll, in a small market like Bradford City's, they'll soon shoot up the list.
Where do you see, out of the list of names, perhaps the more excuse me, the more realistic ones? I mean, look, for something that's been obviously as a Lincoln fan, Danny Cowley is the one that, as a neutral in the situation, I couldn't recommend him highly enough to Bradford fans. But obviously, there's people out there like Liam Richardson. There's people in jobs I've seen that are obviously linked as well, like Pete Wild. There's some good candidates there, but where do you, who would you, if you were a betting man, where would you hedge your bets?
I was going to say, it's what's available. I mean, if they want a quicker appointment, obviously someone like Liam Richardson, who took Wigan up, and so he's got a good reputation. But again, you look at him and think, well, he left Wigan November last year, and he's not had a job since, and he was League One Manager of the Year. So again, it could be someone questioning, well, is there a situation there why he's not been in a job since? So again, it's ditto Danny Cowley. I mean, I think people know my Portsmouth roots, and when he got sacked at Fratton Park, they'd had a dreadful run last season, one win in 12-13.
Yeah.
And he went first week of January, and he's not had a job since. So again, it's whether people sort of look around the situation, but obviously those sort of candidates are available. And there's a few others, and Pete Wild's a good shout, because obviously I think he was pretty close last time. And again, you'd have to get him out of a club. There's a few who you'd look to get out of, but again, he's done a great job. But there'll be someone inevitably say, yeah, he's done a great job at Halifax, he's done a great job at Barrow, but without that horrible phrase, no disrespect, but it's a very different size of club. I'm not saying a better club. It's a much bigger club, and obviously the Goldfish Bowl of Valley Parade is 100 times what he'll have experienced previously. So you've got that scenario. I mean, if you want to be mischievous, in an ideal world, if I could ideal world, I'd go Phil Parkinson or Michael Flynn, but obviously they're both in jobs, so it's stranger things have happened, but it's not easy. But obviously, again, without suggesting any insider knowledge, the fact that they have got more time, should they try and go for someone in a job potentially, it would probably give them more opportunity to do so than if they felt they were rushed into doing it perhaps this week on the back of a bad result at Swindon, and they felt that we've got to get someone in fast. So the McDonald effect has calmed everything down on and off the field.
Yeah.
He's also improved the mood on and off the field. I mean, the crowd, it was chalk and cheese Valley Parade Saturday compared to Valley Parade the previous Saturday. Valley Parade Saturday felt like the good old day, a great day when the crowd love it because the team are having a go, they're winning, and everyone's enjoying themselves. Valley Parade the week before was horrendous against Walsall, who they made look like Real Madrid at times. So, it's those sort of those improvements that have taken the heat off rushing into anything. But as you say, it's the old balancing act of, you're not rushing, but does that mean you just sit on your hands for ages, and should they go 6 games unbeaten, do you suddenly look at Kevin McDonald and say, well, we'll do this a bit longer? It's, as I say, it's not an exact science. It's one of those, it was one of those where you don't really know. But what it has done is calm things down. And that was the first, the first priority, the priority of the Kevin McDonald's appointment was to take the heat off things and sort of cheer everyone up a little bit. And it's got the dressing room. You talk to the players, there's a huge amount of respect there. They're enjoying playing for him. And I think people are enjoying, Kev ball a bit at the moment, aren't they? Because there's chances. Last night at Grimsby, for example, they created a lot. They also, they were also chances the other end, but it was a proper game again. We've had 2 games this week and we've enjoyed them both, and they've won them both. So, that's goal number 1 achieved. And exactly. Goal number 1's been achieved.
Finally, I think you're going to be really mischievous with the betting market, to be fair. I think Benito Carboni's at 16 to 1. That could liven things up for sure.
Well, he was, put it one way, the last time the Bradford City job was available before Mark Hughes came in, Benito Carboni did an interview with someone saying he'd applied for it. And I know for a fact that there was no application that appeared at Valley Parade. So, again, it's one of those, yes, I'm sure I've spoken to him in the past and he said he'd love to be a manager in England. He'd love to come here, but again, it would be a huge gamble, wouldn't it?
It could
And
also be for the Wednesday job, to be fair.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? There are other jobs around. There's Wednesday, and obviously probably more pertinent to City. There's Gillingham, at the same level. So you've got, you look at the betting markets, and there's all the same names across everywhere, isn't it? So,
Well,
I think
slightly different odds, isn't it?
well, exactly. I think from City's point of view, you can rule out a Neil Warnock or a Chris Wilder because they won't go below the Championship. People saying, "Oh, Neil Warnock won last big job. What bigger challenge here?" But I'm sure he'd love a bigger challenge in the Championship because that's the level he knows.
Yeah,
He can walk straight into a club and he'll know all the players. He'll know the opposition. Whereas, putting his reputation on the line for one last hurrah and then it not working out in League Two will not be the sort of finale you'd want, is it? Really,
it would make your press conferences bloody good fun though with Neil
oh, it
Warnock.
would be. It'll be fantastic. Again, in an ideal world, you'd love him. But I think you've got to be realistic, haven't you? But certainly with the Gillingham job available, there'll be a lot of candidates who'll be looking at both. I mean, I've spoken to a few people who are interested, and they've sort of mentioned the other jobs available. So it's very much they're casting their net, and why wouldn't you? But so that does muddy the waters a little bit.
Every manager is just clicking send CV to all, basically.
Exactly. Well, it's always the way though, and it's a domino effect. One job goes, another one goes. There's rumours that another couple could happen quite soon. So it goes boom, 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 and suddenly, I think chairman.
Suddenly, half of League Two's changed manager in the space of 3 weeks.
Exactly. Well, chairman watch each other's. No one wants to jump, do they? And once someone has, they think, all right, we can go now. I mean, the fact that I think Neil Harris went obviously straight after Mark Hughes, and Harris started at Gillingham 3 weeks before Mark Hughes, so it's a very similar sort of timeline. So it's there is a lot of that goes on. No one wants to be seen to be sort of pressing the panic button, so to speak. But once one club's made a decision, everyone suddenly thinks, oh, that's all right. We can go now. So I think there'll be a bit of that, and obviously the outer work managers, as you say, just sort of pile up the CVs and get ready to send here, there, and everywhere.
Well, time will tell how things pan out for the managerial situation at Valley Parade. We'll certainly keep abreast of it and look forward to speaking to you, hopefully, when an appointment is made.
Hopefully so.
Cheers. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.